How's it going? I'm Jeff Slickey here at the Hood Canal School District with Dr. Lance Gibbon, home of the Orcas.
Home of the Orcas.
Good
That's
to
right.
see you. How are you doing? Happy New Year.
I'm doing well. Happy New Year to you as well.
We've talked a little bit off and on over these last couple years about some opportunities that are going to be put forth to the voters in the Hood Canal School District, and this is another one of those conversations, but it looks and sounds a little different than the ones that the previous conversations we had. We've been here talking in the past about a couple different bond proposals that were tried to get passed through to the voters, including with that ways to build out a different sort of wing and have a different transportation area here. Because now, if I remember correctly, it's Miriam Knight who does your buses. Is that, or the Great View School District who helps work on your buses and maintains? Is that how that works?
No, actually, I mean, right now we're doing our own, but we're looking at forming a cooperative with the Southside School District.
Okay, that's what it was. I knew there was some connection in there, but again, it is better to have it all in-house and on the district campus. So you've heard from the voters these last couple years, and due to the supermajorities, they didn't quite make it over the line.
Right.
So you've gone back to the drawing board, you've talked to the architects, you've talked to the parents, you talked to the teachers here in the area, and you've come up with a new proposal, which is actually two proposals coming up on this upcoming February 11th ballot. So we're going to take some time now and just kind of explain to folks why they're going to see two on there, what they do together or separate, or how it works in correlation, and kind of how we got to this point.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity just to share a little bit about this. So we have two ballot measures. One is what we call an EP&O levy. So that's the Educational Programs and Operations Levy. That is a replacement of our existing levies.
Sure.
So when you hear about levies in a lot of school districts, this is what people are most familiar with. It is a program that it's a funding source that serves to provide staffing and programs for services that are not covered by the state. So that can be athletics and activities and clubs. So this year we had our first drama club that we've had in a number of years, and we were able to put on a play and a production. That is something that the levy helps support.
Okay.
It could be smaller class sizes. We have enhanced nursing services, extra counseling, all of those kinds of things. So that's the EP&O levy. That's the program piece. This time around, we're proposing also what's called a Capital Projects Levy. So this is a levy is a shorter term than a bond. The bond that we had proposed was 21 years, and it would have included all of the construction costs up to about $33.5 million. And this levy then is going to be 6 years, and it's about $19 million. So we've scaled back the cost by using a lot of input from our staff and families and communities. So we're addressing the same needs, but we've reduced the cost of the project. But for taxpayers, it's also a huge savings, because when you have a bond, you're paying interest on that money, just like if you signed a home mortgage. Sometimes you have a home mortgage, they list, here's your selling price, but here when you pay it off, by the time you pay it off, here's how much you've paid.
Yes.
You know, it's often more than double what your selling price was. So by shortening this, we're not only saving in the construction costs for taxpayers, but they're now not having to pay those huge interest costs over 21 years, because we're able to deliver the same project in a 6-year period of time.
So does that won't, that's not going to degrade the services that you're offering. You're just packaging it in a different way. And, you know, not that you overshot what you were asking for, or you said, well, the last time around through the bonds, you said, well, we're going to try to put in this whole wing because we want to make it look cool to have a gigantic school district here or something like that. But you were able to pare this back, but still deliver on the needs for the students. And like with the EP&L levy, the kind of the ongoing one that people are familiar with, that is what addresses the unique needs to the Hood Canal schools. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So a good example would be And the EP&O levy, this is going to fund your program, and the Capital Projects Levy funds your facilities and your technology.
Okay.
So we would like to add a music teacher. That's near, a guitar
Yeah,
up
no,
near
you're
and dear to
big
my
time,
heart
for
as
sure.
a former elementary school music teacher. That's a program that I feel like is vital for us to have here at Hood
Yeah.
Canal. But our problem is we don't have any space to provide that service. So the EP&O levy can fund a music teacher for us, but we'll need the capital levy to provide the facility, the space, in order to deliver that service. Same thing would be true with early learning. Right now, we have one early learning classroom, preschool classroom. It is at max capacity. We actually have 20 preschoolers in that classroom, and we have others that would like to be a part of that program. The capital levy will allow us to double the number of classrooms that we have for early learning. And so while we could use some of the EP&O to help fund early learning, it won't help us unless we've got the space. So the
Right.
capital levy is going to provide the space. The EP&O is going to provide the staffing and the program.
So when I think about this, and if I was a voter here in the district and I get my ballot and get ready for the February 11th election and the votes that we can make, if I look at this, part of me might go, well, gosh, you're asking for two things. How do you explain that to folks, and how do these two things, like you mentioned the interest, but are they saving money in the long term, or how do the two things add up together, I guess is the question.
Well, the EP&O levy, this is not an increase in terms of the amount that we're asking. This is a kind of a continuation other than a small inflation per year. So this is replacing and continuing our existing programs and services. There's some flexibility there, so we will be able to reallocate some of those funds to do something like the music program if we have the space to be able to do it. But that's really continuing that. The capital levy really is identifying a number of issues related to our facilities that really limit our ability to provide some of the programs that we'd like to provide, and honestly some things that other school districts just take for granted, that they have a music room, they're used to having a music program. In this particular case, we're looking at also adding a dedicated space for STEM, for science, technology, engineering, and math, and so that's something that we don't have right now, that often schools will have a lab space that allows you to do those types of things. We're doing some improvements on our science room, which is really much smaller than you would expect to see for a middle school science room, for example. So those things are all, I think, important for our students in terms of providing them the equivalent opportunities that they would have in other school districts. And from an investment standpoint, this really, when you look at how it compares with other districts, what we're proposing is less than the average of what you would see in Mason County, far below what you would see as an average rate per thousand in the state, and almost half. I mean, we have a neighboring district that it's almost half that rate. So it's a great value for the taxpayers, because you're making sure that students are getting the programs and opportunities that they need to be successful, while being mindful of the tax impact, because we know that's important.
One thing that I'm thinking about here, maybe you can answer this, is if I am faced with a decision and I see the wording that says a 30-year bond versus a 6-year capital levy, something in my head would say, well, then they're covered for 30 years. So they won't need to come back and ask for additional space or new buildings and wings and things like that. But if it's a 6-year, then then either the stuff's gonna break down sooner and you're gonna have to ask more often. Is that accurate or not accurate? Explain that. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because when you think about the needs and what a bond addresses, and you think, okay, well, this is something that even if we pay it off in 21 years, in the Washington state, you think about the bond cycle is 30 years, because that's the way the state funds matching funds for facilities. And so I think that's something a lot of districts run into, is because they run bonds and they make the assumption that everything is just going to be taken care of for 30 years. But if you own a home, I think about a homeowner and I've just moved into a house that really hadn't had a lot of work done on it for, maybe it only been 12 years. We had to fix a lot of stuff because we had neglected, some of the maintenance had been neglected. So there are always going to be ongoing costs. So even when districts run bonds, it's not uncommon for them to have to come back and say, well, now we need to add this, or now we need to add that. In the case of our levy, this is going to address this particular need at this particular time. But it's certainly possible that you could come back and say, well, maybe 10 years from now, we're going to need a new roof, or we're going to need something else. And capital levies in many districts, that's the way that you address those kind of high ticket items. But you would do that in a way that is saving taxpayer money, because you're not paying that interest. You're not having to, you're asking for the funds when you need them, for the time period that you need them, rather than having to be paying for something 20 years from now that you receive that's now 20 years old and might need to be might have maintenance
I see what
needs.
you're saying.
So in the long run, it really is, it's a much more cost-effective way to provide the needs for our students that a bond would address through a much shorter project.
And you said that and I know that you're mindful of the request that goes out to the voters, and that goes through a process where you're talking at PTSO meetings and things like that, or you go out and you're meeting with the community, and you're like, well, what would you say your threshold would be? Like, what would be the max that you would want to pay? And I know that you here in the Hood Canal School District have worked to stay well below that. I think the state maximum per 1,000 is $2.50 or something like that, $2.50.
Yeah, it's a little higher. It's a little higher now.
So,
but yeah.
Both of the levies combined still are, like you said, less than that max.
That's correct.
It kind of comes in around $2 or so.
Yeah,
$1.80.
$1.89.
Okay,
yeah.
$1.89.
Yeah.
And at the end of both of them are 6 years, or the EP&O levy, the rotating one, that's a 3-year?
4-year.
4-year
Yeah.
one. Okay,
Yeah.
so, and there's no interest on that one. That just kind of is
correct.
a continued supplemental income kind
That's
of.
right. Yeah. So you're receiving an amount every year that helps provide those programs and services that are included with the levy. That's supplementing basic education in the state of Washington. Again, this is what every district in the state is having to do. But that's every 4 years. The capital levy will be paid off in 6, and at that point, it goes off.
It goes off. So you, like, back to the homeowner's note, or the homeowner note, you got your note paid off. They've given you the documentation that says you're free and clear now.
Yeah, you paid for this project in 6 years. It's built, it's done, you can see it. If there are needs then down the road, then we would be able to kind of define those more specifically. And again, I think that's where a capital levy has a lot of advantage over a bond, because it again allows for that kind of just-in-time addressing any particular needs without having to pay all that interest. And it also allows for more thoughtful planning, because you're addressing the needs that are right here in front of you for less cost and in a shorter time.
Looking back and comparing it to what you had asked for in the past, what's the difference there besides the longevity of it? What would have been, or what's the price difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the bond that we had proposed was for $33.5 million. The capital levy is for $19 million. So it's $14.5 million less in terms of the actual ask from voters.
And so let's stop there. So then that means that's when you've gone to the architectures, or that's when you've gone to the community members and said, here's what we had been planning. And we'll put the map up on this, but if we move the bus maintenance parking area, it was going to be down past the
right.
Past
would have been
field.
down here, and what we learned was that if you can locate it closer to utilities and other and your main building, you actually save a significant amount of money, other than, you would have had to run water and power and everything else here, and stormwater. So now by putting it closer to the campus, and it had a couple other advantages too, because it gets your bus maintenance area and storage area right next to your bus loop. So here's the bus loop where the buses pick up, which is separate from the parent drop-off area. It addresses the issue of getting it off the playground, which is where our buses pick up now. And it added this is where our existing transportation center is. It provides us a whole new parking area. So we get kind of expanded parking in the front and the back. This is wonderful too, because it's right next to our field. And right now we don't have convenient parking for our football games and track meets. We'll often have sometimes 4 different visiting track teams. And so this gives you a nice parking for events and that type of thing. So it really, in many ways, as we've worked through this process, I think it's a better plan, even though we were able to reduce our costs.
Sure.
And so, this is a new architect team that worked on these designs, went back to the community, and we really challenged them to come up with some creative solutions and say, how can we address these needs and reduce costs at the same time? And they really did a wonderful job of delivering on that. In the prior proposal, there was an added wing on the back here of the building, and what we're doing instead is doing a lot more renovations, some small expansions to the existing building. That's more cost effective than building an entire separate new building. And then renovating, kind of getting creative within the current footprint of the school to provide some of those programmatic needs that we would have addressed with a secondary building. So it's been, I think they've done a nice job of coming up with a creative solution that is addressing our priorities and reducing costs for taxpayers.
So then that went from 30-something million down to 19 million.
Yep.
And then, what I was asking too, and now you can finish that because I jumped in front of you there, but what's the difference in the per thousand?
So we had proposed a rate per thousand of $1.05, which would have been over 21 years.
Sure.
This is $1.15 over 6 years. So it's a slight increase over the short term. But the long-term cost is, if you include interest, is about a third, really, of what you would have paid, taxpayers would have paid otherwise.
And are the groups understanding this when you go out and talk to them? I mean, I am one of the mindset, you pay this stuff off as fast as you can. I don't want, what's the point of giving that interest money? Just kind of goes off, and it's for paperwork, really, into the ether. And so I'm of the mindset of this initial 10 cents extra based on the previous to now for 6 years versus still paying on it. I mean, I can see too. So that, you've got K through
6,
K through
or
6.
preschool through 6th grade. Preschool through 8th grade.
Through 8th grade. Yeah. So, parents with kindergartners, they'll see that done before they're even out of here, whereas your kindergartner, is getting ready to go to college, and you're still paying on it.
Yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense. That I think when we've explained it to voters and to taxpayers, and even just thinking about it again from just thinking about your home mortgage,
right?
And if you could pay this house off in 15 years, it's kind of the 15 versus a 30-year mortgage, you're not only, you might be paying a little bit more per month, right?
Yeah.
But you're getting it done in half the time, and you're saving yourself all of that interest cost. And so that's really kind of the way of thinking of it, that extra dime gets you done a whole lot faster. And of course, we reduce the cost. And in the long term, boy, that makes really great fiscal sense.
Information on this on the Hood Canal website?
Yep, at hoodcanalschool.org. So people can just go to our website. or just Google Hood Canal School, and it'll come right up. So
You'll
we've
see
got
the orca, and it'll show, and that's how you know.
That's
you're
right.
there.
Yeah, that's right. Look for the orca, and if they just go onto that website, we've got all of the drawings, the explanations, frequently asked questions,
Okay.
lots of information for folks. Really, some great conceptual images of what some of the spaces might look like once they're done, that the architects put together for us. So it helps people really get a flavor for the overall vision.
Yeah. Huh. That's a really interesting model to use for this, and thinking about it in the terms of kindergarten and even the early learning, the preschool, kindergarten, and first graders, even the second graders, those families would be free and clear by the time they're out of here.
Yeah, that everything that now you're benefiting from has been
Yeah.
fully paid for. And,
There is something to say about
you know, and I think the bottom line for us is just really thinking about how does this benefit our students, and we've seen some great results here at Hood Canal recently. Our 7th and 8th graders last year outperformed the state average, and in 4 out of 5 of the testing areas had some of the highest test scores in the region. This year we just started a new Algebra 1 class for our 8th graders, so half of our students are in Algebra 1, so they're moving on to Shelton with a high school credit that they're earning in math. We've won a number of other awards and recognition that is just, it's showing that the work that's being started we've got some great momentum.
Yeah.
But there are opportunities for our students that we're just not able to offer without some of these other facility needs. And so we want to kind of build on that positive momentum. As I mentioned earlier, we've put together a strategic plan. So this is, again, part of a long-range picture that is all going to come together if we can get this, if we can get the support from our taxpayers. And I really believe that the results that people are already seeing at Hood Canal, that this is the best is yet to come. We're headed to really some great things ahead, and this is really how this investment is gonna help us get there.
If you're in the Hood Canal School District, you'll see these on your ballots. On the February 11th is election day there, so you'll get that a couple weeks beforehand. So you have plenty of time to look into this a little bit more, make up your mind, talk with your counterparts here around the district, and find out kind of what they're thinking, and explain some of the things that you learned here in this conversation. And yeah, very cool, very good stuff. I'm at the Hood Canal School District with Dr. Lance Gibbon, home of the Orcas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.